Not live from a room in Los Angeles, it's the Again But Better Tell-All with Christine Riccio. Thank you for having me on Not Live. So my name's Christine. I wrote a book that came out May 7th of this year called Again But Better. Today I'm going to be taking all the questions, spoilery or not spoilery. We're going to be discussing everything you sent in questions on Instagram months ago. If you haven't heard, it's about this planet called Plutonus, who used to be a cool planet, but then got ousted from the solar system, and he's trying to work through what that means. He's been exiled from his people, and he falls in love with this white dwarf, and it's a hate to love romance, super fun. Things start going completely wrong when parasites start making their home on Plutonus, and that infects him and starts to destroy him as a planet. And White Dwarf is devastated. You should definitely consider picking it up for Christmas. My book's called Again But Better. It is a study abroad rom-com about a 20-year-old who is having a terrible time at college. She feels very alone in her worries and her anxieties. She has no friends. She picked a major to please her parents. She's had no romantic encounters, which she was expecting college to be like this romantic, wonderful, life-affirming time, and it's been none of that. She is forcing herself to make this big change because she wants a college experience that everyone around her has told her about her entire life. She decides to study abroad in London. She makes a list of things that she's going to do, and if you haven't read it yet, you might want to pick it up and read it before you sit here with me and listen to the answers to all of these spoilery questions. This video is going to spoil it for you, and in all seriousness, I worked really hard to not have this book spoiled before it came out in terms of like the back and the synopsis and the blurbs and the cover and the way it's described. But if you're ready, you've read it, this is probably the closest we're gonna come to a book talk for Again But Better here. So let's settle in, grab a fucking snack, and let's chat all the things. How many words did it end up being? The final draft of Again But Better had about 111,000 words. How long did it take to write the first draft? I did document the whole process through videos. It took me 6 months to write the first draft. All the Easter eggs. All the Easter eggs. Who do you think I am? Yes. What one song would you say best represents Again But Better?
You could break my heart in two, but when it heals, it beats for you. I know it's forward, but it's true.
That is the song I lip-synced to in one of my announcement videos. A lot of the songs I lip-synced to were the songs that, in my mind, directly correlated with Again But Better.
I play a supercut of us.
Don't compromise it.
If you change your mind, take a chance. I'll be 13 lines. I make no apologies. This is me.
And a lot of those songs you'll see referenced in chapter titles throughout the book. This book was so musical for me, and that is so different from the book that I'm writing right now. My second novel, it's a completely different headspace. Like, I don't need to write with music. I don't see the chapters as music like I do with these. It's fascinating, honestly, how the process between the first book and the second book has completely shifted depending on the story and the characters and what they're going through. Because in Again But Better, it was so lyrical. Like, I'm relating that writing to lyrics, and that lyrics are relating to the right. Like, everything is so tightly woven together. What inspired the name Pilot? I've talked about this in my Book Titles Are Stupid, and this is how I named mine video. Something that I forgot until I looked at this question again. The original name that I had for Pilot that wasn't working had the last name Penn. I just made that up. I think it's just because I thought of William Penn from Pennsylvania, because I did a report on him in 8th grade. And then I was working off of that when I was trying to figure out his first name. And then, of course, when you're looking at the word pen, you're gonna think of pilot pens. Would you have ever been daring enough to pull the study abroad stunt that Shane did? Lol, no. Shane signs up for a creative writing program, even though she's a pre-med student. She tells her parents it's a pre-med study abroad program. I would never, ever have done this, but I was too much of a stubborn ass who believed in their dreams to ever go along with a major that I wasn't 100% happy with and into. I wanted to major in film, and that was not an easy sell. When I realized it was a major, all I did for the next 3 years was make videos and edit and watch movies with a more critical eye, trying to train myself with my handheld camcorder and any editing program I could find on our family desktop computers. There was like random Windows programs. I convinced them that they should update to a Mac and I could use iMovie. Oh, that changed everything. Would I ever pull what Shane pulled? No. I don't think I would have ever let myself get to that point. But if I was in her situation, I don't know what I would do. You get desperate. So who knows what you would do for a chance to prove yourself. Is the second book going to pick up where you left off or start after the epilogue or somewhere in between? I want to straighten this out really quickly. My second novel is going to be a completely different novel. Then again, but better. It's not a sequel. It's going to be following completely different characters on a completely different journey, doing completely different things. I don't want there to be any confusion there. But will book 2 connect vaguely and create the PBCU, which stands for the Poland Banana Cinematic Universe? The answer there is yes, it will vaguely connect. Did you ever have a different major in switching college? I did not. If I didn't find film, if I didn't know film existed as something that I could major in, I might have ended up majoring in something that I wasn't passionate about. My freshman year of high school, I started thinking, like, what am I going to major in college? And I did not know. When I looked on the websites and looked at the college majors, none of them stood out as something that I wanted to do. So many colleges are just like science, math, history, English. If I had to pick one of those, it would have been English. For a little bit, I was like, maybe psychology, because that vaguely interested me, but I don't really like talking to strangers. For a little bit, I was like, I guess I'm going to be a teacher because I like helping people learn stuff. I learned from taking childcare classes my freshman year. I have no patience. I have no patience for children. And then I learned from being forced to help Olivia and Paul with math and English throughout the years that I have no patience. Are there any translations planned? There are translations happening in Spanish, French, Polish, Ukrainian, Romanian, and Russian. Can you elaborate on why you decided to write a YA novel about a 20-year-old instead of a teenager? Yes, I can, because there aren't many of them. And when you are 20, you are still a young adult. I've heard some people say that this reads young, but for the 20-year-olds that are in the same position that Shane is, it doesn't read young. She's in this position where she feels so behind and so self-conscious about being behind. And that is a lot of people at that age that are just not in books. We never talk about 20-year-old people who want to be in a romantic situation, who want to have a partner, who want to have a significant other, who haven't experienced those things. There's a special bubble of insecurity that comes with that because everyone around you at that age is experiencing it. It feels like all the time. That is one of the big reasons I wanted to write this, because there are so many people like that. When you say it reads young, when she gets excited about little things like leaning up against someone that she likes, that's how it is the first time that happens to you. Just because she happens to be 20 doesn't mean that it's not a valid emotion. Maybe you experienced that when you were 13, but the fact of the matter is a lot of people don't, and it builds in you that feeling that it's never gonna happen for you. And when it does, it is the most surprising and exciting thing that's happened. You begin to have this belief that there's something wrong, that you are not attractive in that way. You are incapable of finding that kind of a relationship. That's a lot of what I was trying to encapsulate with Shane's character. That was like the deepest, darkest pit of insecurity for me at that age. I know it is for so many of us. Just a couple years after that, it doesn't feel like as big of a deal anymore. The other reason I wanted to write a 20-year-old is that I have barely read anything about people in college. And when books are about people in college, I haven't read about the actual college part of college much. How daunting it is to go right from high school into this 4-year training program for ideally what is going to be your career for the rest of your life. Everyone around us is like, choose what you're gonna do forever right now. And at that point, you're still a child. You're still living in your parents' house and they still have so much influence over you. You're still very used to having to do what they tell you to do. And it takes some time being by yourself and trying new things on your own to separate the part of you that wants to please them and the part of you that needs to follow what's gonna please you. Because ultimately you have to follow those. And that's another thing that I really wanted to explore, and again, but better. In the end, it matters what you want to do. It's your life. You are going to be the one doing it. Internships. I have not read a book, a young adult book. Young adults are the people who do internships. I've never read a young adult book talking about internshipping. And being an intern is such a weird experience. I had such different expectations from what I had vaguely heard about internships all my life growing up. And that's another thing I wanted to delve into. We never talk about them. Maybe in TV shows you see interns, but I've never seen an internship happen in a book because We don't talk about this age enough. That year is such a pivot point in so many people's lives, and I've never read a book where the main character's like, I'm 20 and I'm going through all this. Everyone's like, I'm 17 and I'm saving the world. I'm 15 and I'm a Shadowhunter, and I'm 11 and I'm a wizard. I love all those, but I felt like there was a gap. People don't seem to think that you're a young adult anymore when you're 20. But what are you talking about? You're still in fucking college. You were gonna read the first chapter in a YouTube video. Where is it? So I did plan to read the first chapter in a YouTube video because I had seen John Green do this for years, and I really love that he does that. I sat down and recorded this a couple days before the book came out, like a month or two after I was there listening to the audiobook be recorded. I couldn't even edit it. I couldn't listen to it. I couldn't look at it because me saying the words was so much worse than the professional audiobook narrator. It hurt me. The stark contrast of knowing how she read it and then hearing myself read it, I hated it. You're much better off just listening to the audiobook. So that's never gonna come out because it burns my ears. And I'm sorry. When is Shane's birthday? Her birthday is June 23rd. Okay, my dudes and dudettes, we really get into the spoiler shit now. Leave if you haven't read it, or if you don't want to be spoiled. I really would like you not to be spoiled if you're gonna read it. Let's do this. Which scene was the hardest to cut? So this particular scene I'm gonna talk about was so hard to cut. I kept holding on to it from draft to draft to draft, and then I changed something, and the whole tone of the perspective scene that I loved changed. I couldn't have it the way it was anymore anyway, so I had to cut it. So it ended up working out. The family dinner scene at the end of Study Abroad, an American family dinner celebration because they were all leaving. That scene was so much happier and so much more of a celebratory experience for Shane than it is now. Before like draft 6, Shane didn't leave her notebook in the kitchen when her parents came. And so Amy didn't find her notebook. And then there wasn't that whole mystery of like, did Amy tell Pilot about everything she read in that notebook? Does he know? What is he thinking? There wasn't all this up in the air suspense in Shane's mind about Pilot in that time. And that completely changed everything, because when someone reads those super private thoughts, you feel violated. The people who have read them, especially if they're not close to you, are now people that you don't want to even look at. They've seen a part of you that you never gave permission for them to see. That's all going through her brain, so they couldn't have this like really fun celebratory scene. We didn't start the fire on, and it's still on in that scene. In the original scene, Shane was talking about how she knows all the words to it, and so Shane starts singing like the da-da-da-da-da, and a Pilot comments on it. He's like, wow, you already know so many of the words. Is that part still in it? But then they kind of have this like, we didn't start the fire sing off sort of a thing, where they're all sitting and eating, and now they're just listening to the lyrics. And there's one point where Pilot breaks out an entire stanza of it with Billy Joel. Shane gets up and does a different stanza. And it's just like super fun, and everyone's singing We Didn't Start the Fire. It was this like happy, like warm, fuzzy scene between them. Could you imagine the audiobook version? I don't think I could have said that many lyrics in order. We learned a lot about song copyright in this book. I think I could only have like a couple lines, like 2 lines or something. In the audiobook, they're not allowed to sing it at all. They would have had to be like, Wheel of Fortune, Sally Ride, Heavy Metal, Suicide. The stanzas would have sounded so weird. But that was my favorite scene that was cut. I held on for so long, held on so tight. I was like, no, this is such a nice family together scene with friends before everyone leaves. Let me have it. Let me have it. So what's the secret about the first few drafts that didn't make it past revisions? So this is a secret about the first draft. Didn't even make it past the entire first draft, because this is when I hit the most intense section of writer's block, when the time came for the midway point. In the first draft, it was just Shane that went back. I wrote the first fish out of water scene when she lands back in the kitchen. It just wasn't working. She wasn't as close with Babe. She had made a friend outside of the flat. She confided in her what had happened. It kind of made the dynamic of everything different. That friend didn't come into play as much in the plotline, so that's why I ended up kind of merging her character with Babe's character. My point in having her have that friend outside the flat was one of her mistakes in college was that she only made friends inside her dorm room. But that didn't end up working out. I had too many extraneous characters. It just wasn't as fun. I was like, what's missing here? Because we've seen that done before, and what I've never seen done before is both the love interest being thrown back in time, because it makes it also so much more interesting with Pilot when he has to make the conscious decision, knowing how everything turns out 5 years later as is. It makes it so much more fun to know that he just experienced that scene with Shay in the cafe right before him. If they don't have that sizzling ugly argument beforehand, it's easier for Shane because she hasn't just admitted all these feelings, and it kind of erases all that. We need to have her take that step to actually admit everything that she was feeling and take that step to admit to herself that she's not happy with how her life has gone. Having him as a witness to that is important when she goes back in time because she has that anchor of a human being who was there, who heard all of that. It's not like all of that has been wiped clean. There's one person there to anchor her to the year she was actually in. What was the question? The secret. Yeah, so the secret was the first time Pilot didn't go back with her. They wrote like 3 chapters. I felt like I was forcing it. She didn't have anyone to play off of. Once that hit me in the shower one day, the showers where all the most magical ideas hit you, I was like, I don't think I even had her going to the cafe before that. But I was like, we had to start the book in the middle. The book used to start at that first scene with her on the steps of NYU during her residency interview. It was like a little baby prologue where you saw her do the residency interview. We knew she was going to be a gastroenterologist, came outside, left a message for Babe / her other friend that she used to have that got merged into Babe, and then hopped in a taxi. And then we cut back to the plane in 2011. I had that in the beginning, then we have all the study abroad, and then we cut back to her getting out of the taxi and going into his building halfway through the book. And the reason why that shifted, we were worried about her being too old for it to be considered YA because the first book opened up when she was like 26 and she was interviewing for residency. I mean, like 20 is definitely young adult, 26 is pushing it. We had to move that to the center just so it could go in the YA section. There was even trepidation about her saying that she's 20 in the first chapter, and I was like, no. Like, she has to say that. That is very important. Everything that's bothering her has compressed to this point where she can no longer do nothing about it. That's why she's doing all this, because she's 20 and all these issues are still plaguing her.
How did you decide how the time travel was going to work in Again But Better, and how did you execute that? Did you write out a plan for how it would work or anything?
The time travel in Again But Better was inspired by time travel in some of my favorite movies and TV shows. It's a combination of 17 Again, 13 going on 30, and Lost. What I love about Lost, it doesn't ever really explain the time travel, but you feel like you can put together the pieces and kind of explain it for yourself. It's not left so ambiguous that you can't imagine what happened. With Lost, I kind of picture it, and this is how I picture it in Again But Better as well. Like, their consciousness snapped back to that time. So everything that they know snapped back, and they were back into their 20-year-old bodies. Everything they know they still knew, but they weren't in their own 26-year-old bodies anymore. They were thrown back. That concept is what I ended up putting into Again But Better in the 17 Again 13 going on 30 way, where it's like just this little dot of magic in there. I love how ambiguous the red-haired lady is, because you really can draw your own conclusions from what you see about her. Is she some time travel wizard that runs around throwing people back in time? Is she a time manipulator? Like, does she do this because they had to be thrown back in time? Is that all hoax, the reset button, to just make them feel okay about it? No, I myself started picturing her as kind of a fairy godmother, and she follows certain people and keeps tabs on them. Which was your favorite chapter to write, and which was the hardest? So my favorite chapter was definitely Paris Take 2. I mean, by that time, I knew I was gonna have so much fun writing all this coupley fun stuff, because this is the part of books that I feel like was always cut out. The part when the couple gets together and they get to have all their fun, cutesy ass romantic times. That's when the book cuts off. They get together and it's like, bye! Another one of my things going into writing this is like, I'm gonna put in everything that I want so badly in other books that I don't get. Like, I want all their conversations that build their relationship. And I have so many long talks in this book, and I had so many more before that I had to cut it down because there was too much. But I wanted it to be like Gilmore Girls. I wanted it to be like, we're there living with them. We see how their relationships have formed. We know their inside jokes. They're real. We don't skip around and just like know that they've been together. We know what they talked about. You watched it happen. That's my favorite part of a book, watching the relationship form, watching these threads come together through conversation. In Paris, you get to see all that kind of come to fruition. You know, we watch it build. We don't see them connect romantically until that point. And it's so much fucking fun. I had So much fun. 2 of those chapters are in the back of the Target special edition, and I annotated them and wrote all little like notes and stuff about what I was thinking when I was writing certain things and why I did this and this and this. It's definitely the easiest chapter to write because I love writing relationship fun stuff, but reading it back, it's like so cute that I can't handle it. I'm like, oh my god, no, it's too much. I can't, my heart, I can't read it. Like, I could not be there for the audiobook when she was doing those scenes. It's cute to me, but like, once I start imagining other people reading it, I want to die a little bit. The hardest chapters for me to write were definitely the more upsetting ones. One of the hardest was the Thunderbolt and Lightning chapter when her parents come. The time period where Pilot isn't talking to her is difficult to write. I wanted it to be there. You need to feel that with her, but also we don't want to spend that much time there. No one wants to be a new moon. Which Crazy Ex-Girlfriend song do you think describes Shane's arc in the novel? I've got 3 answers for this. You've ruined everything, you stupid bitch. That song gets me so emotional. It's such a perfect what women feel like when they make any mistake. Face your fears goes very well with this. And love kernels. The first half of the book is just like, love kernels so hard. What a perfect way to describe this phenomenon when you're just trying so hard to build a case that someone you like likes you back.
Hey Christine, where did the idea for the lamppost come from?
The origins of lamppost. I wrote a movie script in my senior year of college, and I had this joke in it I thought was hilarious when some asshole said something dickish to the lead, and she just calls him a lamppost. And I had one of my best friends, Julia, who was my roommate at the time, read and critique my script. She came to me and she was like, what the fuck is this lamppost joke? Like, I don't get it at all. You seem to think it's so funny. I just started calculating when she asked me, and she's like, Christine, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why is this even in here? And she just always would reference that from that point on. She's like, you have just such a weird sense of humor, you and your fucking lamppost. Then she read Cassie's books after that on my recommendation, and she was like, I see why you like these, because you have the same fucking sense of humor. Yeah, since that point, so that was in 2011, from that point on, Julia has always brought that up to make fun of me, but I've always just been like, I still think it's hilarious. And she was reading and critiquing my book, all different drafts, but she'd only ever managed to get through the first half because she's so busy and she's reading scripts all the time. I had this joke in there and I was like, I could not wait for her to get to it because I was like, I'm making this a real thing in my book. It's gonna be a joke that I'm gonna reference all the time. It's never gonna leave. And she never got to it until I finally was like, Julia, it's gonna be published soon. You have to get to the second half now. I put something in there for you. We're way past it just being a joke. Now I'm in love with it. It's like my favorite joke in the book, so you have to get to it. And that's the origins of it. So it's been a random ass joke that I've had and thought was hilarious forever. When I thought of a way to use that joke in here, oh, I was so excited. It's been there since, I think the first draft, but if not the first draft, definitely the second draft. I laughed every time. Page 208, the curtain page. Was this intended? What is this? You don't know how many people posted a picture of this and was like, Christine, there's a messed up page in your book. Did you know about this? Is this on purpose or is this a big mistake? This was on purpose. It wasn't my idea. I was just happy to have like a blank page. This is the halfway point. This is the... It's intended to be a visual stimulant to make you be like, wait, what just happened? At first, they had something that looked way more time machine-y, and I didn't want that because I didn't want you to immediately know what happened. I wanted you to go on the journey with Shane. Transitioning from this, chapter 1 of part 2 was Helpless. Was that a direct reference to the Hamilton song? Like, how they rewind? Of course it was a direct reference to the Hamilton song. I'm glad you noticed. What other songs did Shane and Pilot almost cover instead of Wrecking Ball? Y'all, Wrecking Ball has been the song they covered from the very first draft. That was one of my hardcore writing songs throughout the book. I just would get in a Wrecking Ball trance. It had to be what they covered, and it just always was. There were no other songs. If you don't know, the chapter where they actually record the video of them singing Wrecking Ball together is in the Barnes & Noble special edition. That is one of the deleted scenes that's in there. When Pilot and Shane read through 2011, are they 20 or 26? How does age work when they continue in 2011? When they go back, they're 26 mentally, but their bodies are 20, so their consciousness, again, has snapped back. And when they stay in 2011, they've basically just gained 5 mental years, but they're still physically age 20, which is kind of the best of both worlds. 6 years age-free. There's a lot of similarities between Shane and yourself, which gives her a lovely personal feel in the novel. But how do you decide where to draw that line, and how do you differentiate her from yourself? This is a question I've been getting a lot, in much more impolite ways. They said it very nicely here. But people are like, is Shane you? Are you the main character here? And things like that make me question my choices. And I definitely made the right choices doing YouTube, but things like that make me question my choices in sharing so much of my life with you. When something is successful, especially when it's a lady, you know, people look for ways to undermine that. If you look at any contemporary novel, especially someone's debut, that novel is usually based off of something that changed their life, a traumatic incident that changed that person's life in a way that was irreversible, that changed everything, that they felt deeply moved by, like so much so that they needed to share with others, because you know that others have been moved in this same way, or that others have felt this same way, and need to know that there are other people out there that are going through it so that they don't feel as alone as you did in that moment. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to say it again because maybe it's not coming through. But I've been here on the internet talking to other readers for 10 years now. And through those 10 years, I've met so many young women that came up to me and told me that they wish they had my confidence, that they wish that they could talk to people like I did, that they were outgoing like I was, and all these things that I wasn't at all, that I'm not. And it's through meeting all of you over and over again, seeing these stories where people felt like they didn't have any friends, that they were having trouble at college, that they've never had a boyfriend or girlfriend. When I set out to write this book, I'm basing it off my own experiences, knowing that all of you have been in the same boat. The main character of this book is an internet reader person that feels very alone and isolated because they don't know anyone in their real life that feels the way that they do. I wrote this for everyone who feels that way, and I knew you were all out there. Not because I'm just assuming, but because I actually physically have talked to all of you for years and have never been able to really say the things that I'm saying in this book aloud, because there's things that you can't say out loud in person in that same way that you can in a book. I can't be as vulnerable and talk in such detail about these things and just to let people know that I felt exactly that way. No one believes me in real life when I say things like that. You don't know how many times people have come up to me and like, sure you're shy, sure you weren't popular in high school, sure you felt lonely. My time in college, pre-study abroad, was, and like, I couldn't really know this when it was happening. I've only seen and felt in retrospect how alone and miserable I was, especially my sophomore and beginning of junior year. The inability to put yourself out there in any way because you feel so scared of being rejected or found out in some way that you're not cool, you know, that you're not an experienced person, that you're not lovable in some way. So many of us have gone through times like that, but this specifically in tandem with college was something that I needed to put out there. So if anyone is on the fence because they're feeling so alone and incapable of putting themselves in a position where they can find friends, that they can do it. And it's different saying that you can do it, like saying that I know that if you study abroad or you do something that might feel scary and uncomfortable, that you're going to succeed, that you are going to find friends, that you are going to have experiences that you're going to treasure, that you're going to make memories, that you're going to have a good time. It doesn't matter when I say it. It's different putting it in a story and watching someone do it and knowing that you could do that too. If she can do it, you can do it. Shane is a lot like me, but she's also a lot like you. These things are not unique to me. The personality traits that she has are not unique to me. They are us. They are readers who are hesitant and scared to go out and have their own adventures, so they find them in books, or people who are afraid to talk to other people, so they find friends in books. This is the story of that person stepping out and being brave and trying to be the person in the book instead of the person they're reading about. I wrote this to reassure anyone who's feeling that way that they can also be the person in the book instead of reading about the person in the book. Obviously, there are some people that just won't relate because not everyone's the same. And that's true with all novels. That's true with everything. You can never make everyone happy. I've given so much of myself to the internet, and I know I've gotten an overwhelmingly positive response over years and years of people telling me to keep making videos and that they relate and all that stuff. And to have it thrown back in my face when I publish something that feels so vulnerable, the fact that the main character reminds them of me makes the book less likable is just mind-boggling to me. No one has said this about any male authors that I know have put a lot of themselves in their novel. And I love when people put a lot of themselves in their novel because the novel hits you harder. It feels more real. It feels raw. It feels honest. My favorite artists, that's why I like their music. Literally in anything you watch where there's a writer in it, they make something that reflects something that's happened in their life, because that's where the best art comes from. It comes from having experienced something similar and putting it into a story or a song or art for other people to relate to, for other people to feel less alone. That's literally what everything is. So it's the most frustrating, heartbreaking thing to hear. This leads pretty fluidly into the question, how do you handle criticism on a book you work so hard on? The only thing you can do is believe in what you did, believe in your art, love what you did, and I love this book. I 110% believe in it. That's why I've pushed for it so hard. That's why I've put my all into it, and then keep making things. Don't let criticism on your work stop you from making more. I watched Taylor Swift put this exact idea into the most wonderful speech when she received her Billboard Women of the Decade award. She said it so beautifully. If you're successful, people are going to look for ways to write that off. It's just something that happens, especially if you're a lady, again, because you couldn't have possibly deserved that. You couldn't have possibly worked for that. They're going to look for ways to make everything you've worked so hard on feel like nothing. And of course, there's a little bit of luck and a little bit of chance and everything, but I've worked my ass off for years cultivating a career in which I could create stories. And that's where I am today. And I'm going to keep creating stories because that's what I love. That's what I'm passionate about. And the thing you have to do is focus on all the positive feedback, because the negative feedback always slams the hardest. It's always the loudest, but there's so much positivity, and it's just harder to focus on it because it's harder to believe it. You always harbor self-doubt. You always harbor something in you that feels like maybe you're a fraud and this is all going to disappear. And any negative feedback, any critique can bring that overflowing to the surface. So you have to do your best to focus on the positivity because there's so much of it there. Let that keep you going, because if you get lost in the criticism, you can easily drown in that. That's part of the reason why it's so important to support the things you're passionate about and let those artists know that you love them. That's another reason why I'm so loud about the things I love now, because creators need to know that people love their shit. That's what keeps them going. That's what keeps them smiling. That's what keeps them creating. And that's not to say that criticism isn't valid in any way. Everyone has their opinions. Everyone's allowed to critique. Another thing that comes up is this extremely condescending statement that an author should read all their negative criticism so that they can learn to do better. We are all always growing and evolving and honing our craft as creators in any field, and you're always working to get better. We are all our own fucking worst critics. I'm always trying to be better, do better, to grow, to try harder, to try new things. Like within literally like a day of the book coming out, you know what people like and what people don't like. You don't need to see it over and over and over again. So to assume that someone is obliviously living in a bubble where they think everything they do is amazing is ridiculous. All that they can do is be as proud as they can of the work that they created before they put it out and hope that it strikes a chord with someone. And so many people have reached out to me and told me their stories about having read Again But Better and how it affected them. And every time that happens, it reinforces that I'm doing something right. It's all those moments that make everything worth it. Is the cafe Pilot and Shane go to based on a real place? Cafe Rewrite is completely made up. It's like a dream cafe that I put together in my mind. I wish it was real. It'd be cool. Was Babe inspired by Natasha? Babe was not inspired by Natasha. She's actually inspired by someone I knew back in college, and then she took on her own life in Again But Better. That's what happens with a lot of characters. I'll start inspired by a personality trait of somebody that I have known, and then they flesh themselves themselves out into a new version of a new person. Why gastroenterologist? You know, I looked up all the different types of doctors that you could become, and gastroenterologist was the weirdest, most random sounding one there was. And I thought it was funny. I was like, I need her to be en route to becoming a gastroenterologist because I find that hilarious. So I talked to one of my best friends who is a doctor, and I was like, okay, I want her to be a gastroenterologist. And she's like, well, technically she can't be going to residency interviews for gastroenterology yet. She has to do like 2 years of internal medicine first and blah, blah, blah. There hasn't been enough years in between her graduation college and the flash forward for her to actually be at that point. So I had to make it so that she was applying for residency for internal medicine with the goal in mind to eventually become a gastroenterologist. She was like, you can make her being a neurologist. That lines up timeline wise. And I was like, no. What do I have to do to make gastroenterology work? Can you talk about Leo a bit more? Leo was a big character breakthrough for me in draft 3. I brought him in and I instantly loved having him there. So he didn't exist in the first 2 drafts. The first 2 drafts are basically the same. I really wanted her to have a family member that she used to be close to, and I wanted that family member to be going through some things very hard while the 2 of them were not really talking, to really drive home the fact that you never know what someone's going through, and if they reach out and you don't meet them in the middle when they need you, you never know what could happen. And it's so important that when someone reaches out that you answer their call, you know, that you're there to support them. You might be going through your own trauma, but someone is always going through something worse, and that's what's going on with Leo. I wish I could have explored it more, but my book was already so long. It really didn't weave into the main plot line enough to have me go off on a tangent. There was more of him originally. I had 3 big flashbacks to them growing up, them in middle school, high school. I also had him involved in the epilogue. The epilogue was completely different. I wrote the epilogue like 100 different times. The first epilogue was more family oriented, and we ultimately ended up going to the more like closure for Pilot and Shane epilogue instead. If you were to switch in Harry Potter characters, who would you switch in? Oh my gosh, thank you for asking me my favorite question to ask authors. I've been thinking about this, and I feel like the only person I could switch in for Shane really is Hermione, because she has that same drive to impress authority figures, and she really respects school. I think Shane has that same respect going, and that's why she tries so hard to do well in med school, and that's why she does do so well, because she has so much respect for just the act of learning. And I could totally see Hermione getting caught up in something that she's supposed to be good at and just driving so hard that becomes her career, and then her realizing that like, oh wait, no, I wanted to do this. How did it get to this point? For Pilot, I can't really put my finger on who I would switch in. Maybe Fred or George or Lee Jordan? I'm gonna say Draco. I mean, Draco's jokes suck. Everything he says is the most unfunny thing I've ever heard. It's so unfunny that it's funny, and that's not the type of funny we're looking for. It's not the type of snark we're looking for Pilot to be doling out. Maybe Sirius if he was younger, Hermione and Sirius, or Hermione and Fred, or Hermione. Oh, I can't see them together though, so I don't like Hermione and Fred. Hermione and Lee Jordan, maybe. We don't really know him, but he's BFFs with Fred and George, so I'm assuming he's got a sense of humor happening. For Babe, I think maybe Luna Lovegood. You need one of those like really just always looks on the bright side people. Luna feels like that person. For Sarah, maybe Ginny Weasley? I feel like Ginny is also one of those people who just tells it like it is. That's Sarah. She's blunt and honest and confident, just always has that air of knowing exactly what she's doing and knowing exactly what she's talking about, and I feel like book Ginny has exactly that. And of course our red-haired woman, red-haired lady, would be replaced with Dumbledore. You said you wrote the book that you wish you had in college. How do you think your life would be different if you had this book then? If I had this book going into freshman year of college, I think I would have been much less insecure and prone to letting fear rule my actions. I was afraid to leave the dorm room and talk to the people on my floor. Like, I didn't want to ever pass the common area, and I had to pass it to get to the bathroom, and I just remember being afraid when people were in there, they were gonna like say something to me or notice that I wasn't hanging out with them and everyone was in there and I was like the loser on the floor that didn't hang out in the common room. So I'd like run past there, or I'd like creep past there, or I'd wait for there to be less people to go to the bathroom bathroom because I didn't want to have to pass it. And I just think that I would have gone in with a different mentality, because I did. I went in being like, college is going to be amazing. It's going to be this great experience where I'm going to have like all these fun memories, and I'm going to date people, and I'm going to make the best friends of my life, and I'm going to like live in the city. And I didn't take advantage of living in the city until, again, after I studied abroad. I had 1 year that was the most amazing year ever, my senior year. After I studied abroad, I threw myself into everything. I went to so many events by myself. Literally, I got home and I was like, I can do anything by myself. I bought a ticket to VidCon, and I roomed with a random girl who I found on a VidCon forum named Katie Strange, and she became my first YouTube friend. Like, I know her to this day. After that, everything changed. I talk to people in my classes sometimes. I have to make a conscious effort to do that, and I did it senior year, and I got involved in like some extracurricular shit. Then the next year I went to VidCon again, and I went to Playlist Live by myself. I went to Summer in the City again, the same way. Like, I wasn't invited, I just went. Everyone I vaguely knew was someone who was a guest, so I was just like alone walking around on the floor a lot of the time. But then I made friends. If you throw yourself into this situation and you just have the confidence that you can handle it, you're gonna meet people, especially when you go by yourself. And that is something that I took forever to have the confidence to do. You just have to let yourself fly. You have to throw yourself from the nest. And I did not do that. And if I had read this earlier, I would have done it earlier. I have no idea how my life would have changed. You know, I have no idea who I would have met. I would have maybe joined some clubs. I would have tried harder to do things that I was afraid to do. If I had seen someone who felt the same way I did about these things and know that they can do it, like, that changes everything. To have one person that you relate to so intensely, to see that they did it, changes everything you believe about yourself. You can do more than you think you can do, and you can succeed in more than you think you can succeed in. And if you want to go to a fucking convention by yourself, that is the best way to prove to yourself that you can make it through any situation by yourself. I have literally made my best friends by throwing myself off the nest. Jessie and Kat, we became real hardcore friends because we went to VidCon. We all went to VidCon, even though it was scary and weird and we had never met these people except on the internet. We went to VidCon. Natasha messaged me on the internet, and then I flew across the country to hang out with her for like 5 days, and that's how we became besties. Like, I would have never ever done that before. I would have never had the guts to go across the country and hang out with this person for so many days that I had barely met before in real life. You know, we had met once before. We had lunch together after VidCon, and that was it. And then that next February, I flew out and hung out with her for like 4 or 5 days. We had the best time ever. We did the Vampire Academy red carpet. It was amazing. I wouldn't have gone to VidCon if I hadn't gone abroad. I like wasn't even considering it ever at all. Like, I knew it existed. I watched people go to the first VidCon. I would never have thought that I could go. You know, it's those experiences that brought me here, exactly, like anything with butterfly effect out. If I had done this sooner, who knows if I would have discovered the internet like I did. It's risky business thinking that way, but maybe I would have found something else that I love. I would still have taken screenwriting classes. I would just be more involved, and like maybe I would have, I don't know, I honestly have no idea. Who would I have moved out to LA with? Like, not Kat, because I probably wouldn't know her, because I probably wouldn't have discovered the internet the same way, but I would have been happier sooner. So who knows? I wouldn't have missed 3 years of what could have been. When I think of those years, I have all these, you know, different, like, kind of saddish memories and like these dashes. And if I'm looking at a timeline, it would be like 2008 graduated, dash. 2011 studied abroad. Like, all of that could be in one dash, because all of it was kind of just like sad and moody and alone. Maybe some way I would have found myself back here anyway. It's scary looking at life like that. Did you have any issues writing some of the bigger flaws in characters, such as Pilot's cheating on Amy? All the stuff with Pilot and Amy was very delicate, especially Shane's relationship with Amy in general. That scene where she reads her journal, where they're both in the kitchen, was something I rewrote so many times, because I didn't want Amy to come off like a villain. If you were in Amy's shoes and you saw that diary sitting next to you, would you have opened it? And the answer is probably yes. Would you have shown Shane that you opened it? I don't know. You know, would you have shut it when she came in? Maybe. Like, how do you deal with that? And I think both of their reactions were justified. I feel like a bunch of people when this came out were like, I can't believe, like, why did you decide to have Pilot cheat on Amy? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, because it happens. Stuff like this happens all the time in real life. And it's not the be-all, end-all of somebody's character, especially in high school and college. Like, people are learning who they are and what they need in a relationship and how to break up with people and how to just be in a relationship in general. It's part of young adulthood, and people make mistakes. People are flawed by definition of being human. You know, it's hard to write scenes like that, but it's also something that happens all the time, and it's real, and is part of why the book's a book. There is a plot. There are issues. There are mistakes. Does she ever use her medical knowledge to tutor or counsel med students? It hurts that she's just throwing away all those years of schooling. So I feel you here, and I would imagine that Shane's novel actually takes place in med school or something. Like, med school things are happening around them. Her two characters maybe are med students. Like, she's gonna use that knowledge in books. It's gonna come in handy, don't worry. She's gonna implement it in different ways that maybe you wouldn't think of immediately, but it will come in handy in her life. Gosh, that was a lot of talking. That wraps up this Again But Better tell-all Q&A with spoilers. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I covered my basis for all the things that you were wondering about. If you have more questions, maybe I'll do another one in the future. Who knows? My name is Christine. My book is Again But Better. If you want to get it, if you want to get any of the special editions, links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm at ISeenMay on Twitter and Instagram. I hope your projects are going well. You can do it. I believe in you. I will see you next time. Goodbye!